Hi everyone, my name is Loyal Wooldridge. I am the BC NDP candidate for Kelowna Centre, and this is the first in a series of Community Quickcasts that I'm going to be bringing to you in 15 minutes or less, discussing some of our community's top issues and the sustainable solutions to overcome them. Now, I couldn't think of someone better to join me than on this inaugural episode than my council colleague, Rick Weber, also well-known face from journalism for over 30 years from Global Okanagan and CHBC. Welcome, Rick.
Oh, I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you. You know, I see you have the stopwatch going here because on TV, everything had to be timed right down to, you can interview the Prime Minister, but you had 6 minutes between two commercial breaks.
But we don't have commercials
No,
here.
that's fantastic.
So that's great.
So you're introducing me, but I'm going to be talking to you, asking you the questions, right?
Kind of awkward.
It's an odd one, but we'll do it. And, it's interesting you're running for provincial politics now. You've been on council now 6 years. Mm-hmm. And during that time, you've been the chair of the regional district. You were the chair of the library board, for instance, right?
Yep.
Plus, in your past, you were also an entrepreneur, a business person. You started a business. And that is, you might kind of say, a little bit of an unusual resume for an NDP candidate.
Yeah, for me, it's always been fusing a social heart with a business mind and really bringing center approach to politics. And I joined council in 2018 because of the social challenges that we were experiencing downtown. And I really wanted to learn them at a grassroots level, knowing that they really laid within the provincial realm. Mm-hmm. So it was really a training ground for me to understand them from that view, and then to understand the solutions to overcome them.
No, and you are one of the people on council who really goes at it in terms of finding housing and the homeless situation. But I know you wanted to talk specifically a few things here, specifically housing to start with, right? And I've actually covered BC politics. I started in 1978. Covering news, both municipal politics and provincial politics. This is the first time, it's interesting we're talking about housing, because I can't remember a time in all these better part of 50 years where housing and the housing ministry was such a powerful force within the government. It was never a big topic.
Yeah, and I think that's an example of why the crisis has grown over time. When we saw government exit the housing business in the early 2000s and not build new product has really led us to where we are now. Mm-hmm. And so we're at this point where our population's been growing, housing starts haven't been where they need to be, and now we're at this crux where young people can't afford homes and can't find a place to live. So government is definitely taking some big moves to move the dial when it comes to housing.
It's true. And now here we are living in Kelowna already, what's been called the fastest growing city in the country. Mm-hmm. I think something like 9,000 people moved to the central Okanagan a year. That's a fair-sized town moving here, right? So we need the housing just to handle that growth. Never mind for people who are playing catch up. Then on the other hand, at City Council, we're always hearing from neighborhoods going, we really don't want that much housing in our densification in our neighborhood. So how do you reconcile that?
Yeah, it's a challenge because folks have lived in town for a long time. Communities are changing. That's difficult for neighborhoods. But then on the other hand, we have young people that need homes. And so we have to grow in a responsible way that we can invest into the infrastructure we need to support those people. So where we're seeing the most amount of multifamily development are on our transit-supported corridors. Right. And this is often the debate that we face around the table is we need to bring density so that we can increase transit service so that people rely on their cars less. But it's kind of a chicken or the egg. We can't invest into transit until we have the density. Otherwise, we highly subsidize it with taxation.
It's a trick. Yeah.
It's a challenge when we have such a fast.
No, and that's one of the big things on council for me is, I'm all about improving roads and increasing roads. But I've learned in my 2 years, my little 2 years, that transit is going to be extremely important in the future, right? And you're right. It's the chicken or the egg. How much do we subsidize it to make it good?
Yeah, exactly.
And I don't know. I don't even know the answer to that. But also the other part of housing is Kelowna is notoriously expensive, and so we desperately need what they call non-market housing, supportive housing, whatever the term is.
Yeah, non-market.
Non-market, and that's expensive.
It is because, developers' costs are the cost. The land value, whether it's affordable or not, is the cost of materials, the cost of labor. Those three aspects contribute to the cost of housing. So that's where governments really had to re-enter the housing industry to start offering lower interest loans, partnerships on land, and different initiatives to soften the overall cost of development, because they have to make, obviously, their margin in order to get it financed through the bank. So that's where government does need to step in and work with the private sector to deliver that inventory.
I could hijack it and we could talk about parking regulations because that came up last night at council, but we won't go down that road. Now, in terms, again, of growth and infrastructure, a lot of the times I do hear from people, is the infrastructure keeping up with the growth? Mm-hmm. Are the roads, sewers, water, whatever they think is infrastructure? And that takes provincial money.
Totally. It takes collaboration with the province, as well as planning with the city. And obviously we're faced with that with our capital planning every year, where we have to balance our budget locally because we can't run a deficit locally.
That's right.
But we do need those infrastructure dollars from the province to flow through. And I think the city of Kelowna has done an exceptional job of fostering the relationship with the BC government, the NDP, to deliver services. And I know that through advocacy, we've been able to attract millions, tens of millions of dollars towards our infrastructure. And that's been really to those fostering relationships, both at a staff level and political level with our government. And that's really what inspired me to run for this party in the first place.
No, and I know, speaking from a cynical post-media level like I do, it has been surprising to me how well we do get along, even though we don't right now have an NDP MLA with the provincial government. They like to hear that we are looking for solutions, that we're all ready for them to come in, we're giving them providing the land or whatever, it's all ready to go. And they're taking us up on that.
Yeah.
And so I think it would be, speaking as a selfish city councillor now, it would be great to have a member for the NDP, to be honest. It would be great to have that so we can just keep nattering at you and nag you and bring that in. That's my attitude.
It's easy for Victoria not to know what our priorities are when you don't have representation here. So by having someone that's actually in government caucus, it helps with that. Obviously, the government does a great job of reaching out, but when you have someone embedded here that can focus on made in Kelowna solutions, it'll go a long way. And
then practical things like we want to extend the road network, what they call it, the Highway 33 connector, or up in Glenmore.
Yeah.
How much help do you think we can expect from the province, or should we expect from the province with that? Because we're trying to catch up with our infrastructure.
Yeah, I think if we're in line with the mandates of government, it's a lot easier for them to come alongside. For example, the Highway 33 multimodal extension that we've looked at has a price tag of $140 million. That's really difficult to deliver as a city, so we rely on those relationships. But that goes hand in hand with delivering the density targets that the province has put out in terms of housing. So really, a lot of those policies intersect. And again, it's that chicken or the egg. We need to see that density before we can invest in the infrastructure. So we are playing catch up, but that's part of the growing pains with one of the fastest growing cities that we have.
And then another example is schools.
Yeah.
There's neighborhoods crying out for schools, and it's not a city thing, but it is. I mean, the money comes from the province, and the school district, I'm sure, has requests in for schools all over the city, over the central Okanagan. But I don't think that the province can keep up with the demand.
Yeah, again, population continues to grow. When we don't have representation here to bring those priorities forward, it's more challenging. As a city, we plan through our official community plan where those school sites should be based on density.
Right.
But again, we need that voice in government to be able to deliver those priorities. And we looked at doing that with Parkinson Rec Centre. And if we had someone here that was advocating on behalf of the city of Kelowna, it would be easier to move that dial.
Oh, and then is there maybe there's a last topic I want to talk to you about that's going to be difficult, but before we get there, healthcare. I know West Kelowna, our region is always crying out for that. And again, that's big ticket item.
It is, and we've seen that with the Regional Hospital District Board and investing into KGH, which is an amazing healthcare campus. We offer amazing service there. There's a lot of growing pains, obviously, with healthcare, with hundreds of thousands of people moving to British Columbia a year. We have to keep pace with that. We're building a new school at SFU to train more doctors, bringing those online, 800 hired last year. So there's more work to do. This government inherited a very sick patient when it comes to healthcare, and we need to continue to invest into the workers that keep it moving. I'm also really proud of BC Cancer. They offer amazing services and research here that the world is following, like brachytherapy. So there's a lot of potential with KGH and BC Cancer specifically. I know that it's been running so efficiently at BC Cancer for treatment. We actually had patients coming in from Victoria and Vancouver when other areas were sending to the US. So those are some strong strengths. Obviously, more work to do. There's no perfect government, but I think we can work on it.
It's interesting you say that, because my mom years ago had cancer, and she had to take an ambulance to Vancouver to get the treatment that they do have here now, right? So I mean, that is a big. That's a comfort for people, I think, at least. But we, at the same time, we know there's shortages of workers and so forth. So just before we run out of time, I do want to talk to you about what I think it's a funny thing being on council. This is our biggest problem, our most unsolvable problem, and yet not even something municipalities were ever meant to take care of in a way. And that's just dealing with our homeless population and addiction and so forth, right?
Yeah.
And you're a very loudmouth, but outspoken guy on council.
Sure.
I was trying to find the nice word, right? But it's not a laughing matter. But you constantly pressing. We need these new facilities in before, for instance, winter. You say that, right? And nothing happens that fast. I mean, I think what council did and the province did, getting the shelters they did get up last year as quickly as they did, by government standards, was lightning fast.
100%. And again, that's why I joined local government in the first place, was to really understand this issue from the grassroots level. I grew up in an RCMP household, which was very enforcement focused, which I think that's where a lot of people go when they're experiencing crime as a result of poverty. But we know that that's not the answer. And so all of these pieces of the puzzle, whether that's emergency shelters or supportive housing or now complex care that the province has stepped up to fund, as well as looking at something like the Redfish facility for folks with really complex mental health and substance misuse challenges, is really pieces to the puzzle. But at the end of the day, the cost of poverty is huge. We just saw recently $20 million over 4 years invested into supporting our unhoused.
By the municipality. By this municipality. And about 10.5 of that was actually property tax money.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. And the majority of that is around policing and bylaw.
Right.
And so, we know that every dollar you invest into social services and support saves you $2 on the other end. So there's more work to do. Again, this has been neglected for decades and decades. And so it's not going to be quick, easy, or cheap. But it's something that we have to continue to prioritize because it is affecting our community, whether you're sleeping unhoused or you're not. It's affecting everyone in our community.
And so when you go back to the province, for instance, the tiny home thing wasn't part of their plan.
Yeah.
And I think the mayor brought it up and we brought it up, and now they like it. And so if you go to Victoria, what would your message be? Like, would you like to see that kind of thing going on all over BC and more of it here in the Okanagan?
Well, the tiny homes, as an example, I think is a fix to help people not be sleeping outside during the winter. Right. But what we need to focus on is building affordable housing, working on poverty reduction, building more supportive housing, but also the supports, medical supports that people need to go onto a path of recovery. It's going to be different for everybody, but that's what I'm committed to working on. And again, I think that's one of the biggest issues we're faced with across this country, faced with the opioid crisis and others. So not going to be easy, but it's easy to identify the problem. It's not as easy to work on the solution.
And I think it shocks people because now when you're out and about, you do come across the problem personally more than ever before.
Absolutely.
Right? And then so you're affected by it, right?
Yeah.
And so the addiction situation, I feel like over the course of time, I have to say this, the NDP, it's your thing, but I thought the NDP's response to it has been uneven. And our mayor and our council and others had to apply to get rules back in that you can't do drugs in certain areas, right? Again, what would your message be? What would you take to Victoria in that regard?
So I think what this government's done well is it's adjusted the sales when it's heard feedback. And they heard that decriminalization wasn't working. They adjusted the sales to walk that back so that other solutions can be worked on. I think any mammoth problem and challenge requires us to think outside the box and do things differently. And it may not work 100% of the time, but doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result is also not going to achieve a different outcome. So we have to have the courage to do things differently and then adjust sales when the time is right. So.
All right. Well, I have much more, but I see we're pretty much running out of time.
We are, and of course, we're not covering all these topics today. No. The purpose of these episodes is I'm going to bring on subject matter experts over the next 11 episodes and share with you some of the challenges we face in Kelowna and the solutions that we need to overcome them. And you can find out more on my Instagram at Loyal Kelowna or also on Facebook. So we'll be coming to you every single week.
And I'll be back, right?
And you'll be back to close it all.
That's interesting.
So thank you so much, Rick.
You.
I appreciate it.